Hi, my name is Joshua Zeiber, editor of the Video File Movie and Home Theater blog. Welcome to Film at 11. I'm here this week with my son Joseph. In a previous episode with Joseph, a couple weeks ago, we watched E.T., and at the end of that, we played a little game where Joseph had to pick a year randomly, not knowing what for, and it turns out that once he selected a year, I would then pick a movie from that year to do for our next podcast episode together. And that's this week. The year he picked was 2007.
I chose a good year.
I'm not sure that he did choose a good year. I went through the list, and there's a lot of sequels to franchises that you don't care about, Joseph. It's mostly what 2007 was. But I did manage to pick out a couple of good choices, and I hope that this one turns out good. I have actually not seen this movie myself, but we'll discuss that a little bit later. So, you have no idea what this is?
No.
Nope. Well, let's find out. This week, you're going to watch Hairspray. Have you heard of the movie Hairspray, Joseph?
No.
Okay. This is a musical. It's based on a Broadway show, which was actually based on another movie before it was a Broadway show. So it's a movie turned into a Broadway musical turned into a movie remake. And
Is this the original?
no, this is the remake.
Okay.
So it gets a little confusing. Hopefully it makes sense when we watch it.
Okay.
All right. So, do you like musicals, Joseph?
Depends.
Depends.
Sometimes.
You know what? I agree with that. All right, well, we'll see. I've heard some decent things about this one. Let's see if it's any good.
Okay.
All right. Here we go. We're going to watch Hairspray. Hello, we've just come back from watching Hairspray, the 2007 version. Joseph, as I mentioned in the first half of this episode, this was technically a remake of an older movie, which was not really a musical. I mean, it had songs and music in it. It still had the same setting of
Baltimore?
well, yes, of Baltimore, and also involving the TV show where they do the dancing. But it wasn't the type of musical where the main characters just suddenly burst out into song throughout the movie. But that movie was popular enough that they did turn it into a Broadway play, which was a more traditional musical. And then that was so popular, it was hugely popular, that they made a movie of the play, and that's what we have here. So it's sort of a remake, but sort of an adaptation of the play. This movie is, on its surface, a very bright and colorful and bubbly and cheerful musical with a lot of upbeat songs in it, yes?
Yeah.
But it also has a few things on its mind, I think.
Yeah.
For you, what did you pick up on in your first viewing? What would you say this movie is about?
It's about racism.
Racism, yes, it is. It's about racism, especially racism, but discrimination of all kinds. Because in addition to the obvious themes of racial integration, there was the fact that Tracy herself was overweight, and people were discriminating against her for that.
Yeah.
Because they thought she wasn't pretty enough, or she wasn't thin enough to be on television. They thought she wasn't worth being on television, and she had to prove to them how wrong they were.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, this was clearly also the other major theme was clearly the racial discrimination against all the black kids who just wanted to have the same opportunities that the white kids did and weren't allowed to.
Mm-hmm.
How much have you studied in school about that period in time?
Not much.
Not too much at this point?
No.
Okay. But yeah, it was the 1960s were a very turbulent time for that, because prior to that there had been much more strict segregation between the races, and in the 1960s those barriers started to break down, and the people who were used to it the old way, especially white people who benefited from it, didn't react too well to that, unfortunately. And it took a lot of hard work from a lot of people to change things. And this is obviously a fictional story. It's a very exaggerated story, but it was due to things like people to protesting, for example, which they did at the end of this movie, that helped to break down a lot of those barriers and made our culture a little bit better. I wouldn't say it's fully fixed yet, unfortunately, but we're trying. We're getting there.
Yeah.
All right. What else about this movie stood out for you? Anything?
No.
Nothing stood out for
you. The colorful setting stood out.
Yeah, it was a very colorful movie. It was definitely a very colorful movie.
Yeah, I wrote that down.
Yeah, because I think Tracy's life was one where she just embraced very bright colors and a lot of like almost silly, frivolous things.
Yeah.
But it got to, but that it actually had a deeper meaning to it ultimately. Yeah. Okay. Do you have any other notes before we move on?
Yeah, I noticed that Tracy wore checkers, the checkered dress at the end of the movie, and that kind of represents the integration.
Yeah, good catch. Yep, definitely symbolism there. Okay, anything else?
Yeah, I noticed that Corny Collins, he kind of seems like he thought of himself a little bit more than other people.
Yes, he was very arrogant and egotistical. Corny Collins being the host of the music TV show that Tracy wanted to be on. It's true. He was a very superficial person for the most part. But yeah, at the end, he was the one who came around the first, but certainly before the station manager, the other girl's mother there, who was super racist. But to his credit, Corny Collins came around and he was one of the first to embrace the integration of having all the black kids and black dancers on the show. So it just goes to show you can't really judge someone fully until you see exactly how they behave in those situations.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Did you have anything else you want to talk about?
No.
Okay. So, what did you think of the music in this movie?
I thought it was okay.
It was just okay? Was it not your type of music?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, fair enough. I mean, it is music from the 1960s. That's quite a few decades before you were born. But it was, it was very upbeat and bouncy and kind of fun, yeah?
Yeah.
Do you think so? Okay. I will say, personally, I'm not a huge musical fan. I don't hate the genre. It's just not my favorite genre. I think that some of the songs in this went on a little too long.
Yeah.
Especially at the end when they had the "You Can't Stop the Beat" song, which was the main theme of the movie. Yeah. That just really seemed to go on forever. So I think that the movie could have benefited from a little tightening there. But I think a lot of that is probably also a consequence of being adapted from a Broadway show, where on Broadway, those longer songs are encouraged. Okay, so Joseph, on our rating scale for this podcast of either a W or an L, where ultimately would you fall on this version of Hairspray?
I'd give it, it was definitely more in the W range, but it was more of a weaker W.
A weak W there. Okay.
Yeah, a weak.
Okay, so you didn't dislike the movie, but it wasn't your favorite of the ones we've watched.
Yes.
That's fair enough. This was a movie that I picked largely just blindly based on what year it was released, because we played that little game about choosing a year. That it wasn't one that had really been on my radar to do for the show. But I thought it was interesting. I didn't dislike it. Maybe not my favorite either, but because I actually have seen the original Hairspray. I hadn't seen this version before. I like the original version better personally, but it was fine.
Yeah.
Last question: what did you think of of the fact that Tracy's mother was played by a man? Did you understand anything about that?
No, I had no idea.
Okay. So the actor's John Travolta. He's a pretty famous movie star. He's known for doing a couple of big famous movie musicals, including Grease. But he the reason that they cast a man in that role is because in the original version of Hairspray, that role had been played by an actual, I don't know if transsexual was the correct term at that time or if that's how he felt, but it was by an actor named, or actress named Divine, who was an actual cross-dressing individual. I don't know what the correct term for divine is, to be honest with you. And so this was sort of paying homage to that, the fact that so they cast a man in the role in order to pay homage to that. But I don't know how I feel about John Travolta in the role personally, because for me, maybe this is a me issue because I know who John Travolta is. I've seen a lot of other John Travolta movies. It was too distracting to me to see him wear a dress when I know what he normally dresses like. But probably wasn't as much of an issue for you. Did you even realize it was a man at first?
Yeah.
Okay, you did. But you didn't know what to make of it, why that was happening.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Okay. All right, so you did rate it a W, but a very, very, very weak W.
Not a very weak W, just a weak or W than the other W's I've given.
Okay, a weaker W. Fair enough. Although I will say most of your W's are pretty weak, Joseph.
Yeah.
You're not very enthusiastic about a lot of the movies that I try to pick for you. So for our next one, I think we're not gonna do the game where I blindly pick a year. That I'm gonna try and pick something else. I'm gonna pick something that I choose for you. Okay. But until that time, we're going to wrap this one up. If you like this content, like, share, and subscribe. Comment below if you have suggestions for movies we can watch.
Please subscribe.
For a grown-up take on movies, go to videofileblog.com. And
I'm going to go to bed.
Okay. You all right, sis? You ready? Buck up. Wake up.
Too late.
Oh, you're always complaining you want to stay up late, and then you do, and you just can't do it. Oh, it's so late. I want to go to bed. Yeah. Okay. Let's get going.
I wanted to pull an all-nighter before I decided that I wanted to crawl into my bed instead.
Yeah. Sleeping is nice. All right. Are you about ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, we're back from watching Hairspray, the 2007 version. Really, Joseph? For real? You're going to take a big yawn right as we start talking?
Sorry.
Take two.